All right, it looks like we have everyone here. So we'll get started at 6:05. These committee meetings can be a little bit more informal since it's such a small group. We'll do a brief roll call where you can state your name and where you're attending the meeting from, just kind of around the Zoom screen. We can start with Zachariah.
Yeah, Zachariah. I guess I'm the chair of the main commission. He, him, I'm calling from Ann Arbor.
AJ?
AJ,
Sorry.
and I'm calling from Ann Arbor.
Thank you.
Hi, Richa, calling from Ann Arbor.
Okay, great. And then since this meeting isn't televised, only folks who have called in or are attending the Zoom meeting right now have access to speak during the public hearing. So if anyone who is attending this meeting would like to, well, first we'll approve the agenda. We can just do it. Is there any objection or amendment to the agenda? Just the one item. Okay, then we can move on. If there is anyone here who would like to address this committee for 3 minutes, you can use the raise hand feature now. Okay, neither of the Zoom attendees have raised their hand, so we can close public hearing or public comment and move on to business. I'll kind of turn that over to you guys or to you all. So you can, I have some notes, but you can get started first.
Cool, thanks, Kristen. I know we all expressed interest in having some kind of town hall. I think some good things maybe to hammer out would be what the goals of the town hall, might be. If we're gonna have one or multiple, that's another question.
Mhm.
Are we just wanting to hear from tenants? Do we want to also educate tenants about their rights? It's very clear that there's a big issue in the city of tenants not knowing their rights. I recently had an experience where a tenant had money taken from them for a waitlist deposit fee, and it was supposed to be refundable, and it wasn't returned to them, and they didn't know their rights in order to get that back. But we ended up walking through that together. But that really showed me that a lot of people just don't know their rights. So do y'all think we should start there about like what the goal should be of the town hall?
I agree. I think that's a good idea. And to the extent that we can keep that, fairly focused, then we can start to talk about what some of the other desirable elements of the town hall would be.
Yeah, most definitely. And another thing I'd like to talk about, maybe after we can talk about the goals, is the other similar events that are happening throughout the city, because I am aware of 2 other similar events to like tenants town halls that are coming up, hosted by different groups. And that will kind of maybe segue into a conversation about partners in planning this, if we want to do it with like different housing groups, or if we just want to do it as a renters commission. Yeah. Well, do you all have any thoughts about the goals of the town hall?
I was thinking that I don't know if it has to be the specific goal, but it should certainly be one of our objectives throughout the session would be kind of to establish this commission's dedication to transparency and to openness and to honesty. And, since it's a new commission, we should use it as an opportunity to try to establish ourselves so that going forward, at least, we might be viewed by the tenant community as a positive organization. One that's going to provide some benefit, because I suspect they're probably going to be, given the political nature of this subject of rent, there's probably going to be a lot of potential naysayers in terms of what we can possibly do or will do or be able to do. And so at least to get ourselves positioned, because obviously right now, no one knows who we are or what we're about.
Did you have any thoughts on that, Richa?
Yeah, I've just been thinking about maybe this is more from a structure standpoint, but like this would be different from a regular renters commission meeting in that typically there's a separation between the attendees and the panelists, where the attendees have like separate public comment time, and then we have our meetings, but there's less interaction. So from like a structure standpoint, which we would come to later, we would probably talk about how it can be more of a conversation rather than first we listen and then others listen to us kind of dynamic. But I do feel like it should be separate from a regular renters commission meeting where attendees, have it, and that could be in different ways. Maybe you want to hear from a larger group of attendees or a larger number of tenants through this town hall exercise than we could typically reach through a regular renters commission meeting, which is a small number. So yeah, as an objective, maybe want to hear from more tenants, but also I think a renters commission goal is to also bring in different diverse perspectives. So as much as possible, maybe our questions can be broad, and if we could think of these essential questions that could be answered and interpreted very differently by different groups. For example, we know with right to renew that there are so many perspectives on it, and that's just specific law. And with that as an example, we're seeing that, Section 8 housing or like M housing, like some of these things don't apply to different types. So if there are broad questions that can be answered by various kinds, like groups of tenants, that would be nice to also achieve. So just making it appealing to various tenants groups is something that I think would be nice.
Zach, I had mentioned to Kristen before you came on, I was out trying to look for what some best practices in town hall meetings could potentially be. I came across one document, don't know how helpful it'd be, but it may serve as kind of some things to spark some thoughts. It might be somewhat controversial, but I found a document that was actually produced by the Paul Simon Public Policy Institute, which is at the Southern Illinois University. And I think it's about 3 years ago. I sent Kristen a copy of it, but I was kind of curious. They, first and foremost, they started off with the perspective that a lot of the town halls now are not very productive. So they were established as a purpose for looking into, well, how can we improve them? In fact, they went on to say that, that the nature of the town hall meeting has changed drastically in the last decade or so, and that it's kind of worsened, especially with the advances in technology, especially the revolution in social media. And they were saying that a lot of the town halls now are being held, and they're kind of contrived, and that the meetings are kind of tightly controlled, and that they tend to fuel more public anger and skepticism about the political process. And so their objective was to come out with maybe 2 or 3 recommendations as to how it could potentially be. And it's not a very long document, it's about 4 pages, and Kristen can send it to you. But I listed 3 of them that I thought may be interesting for us to take into account, and they may reflect a little bit upon our objectives, since that's what we're talking about. I'll go through them very quickly. Number 1, which I think may be the most controversial, is their number 1 best practice was saying to recast the structure of town hall meetings as listening and learning sessions that focus on lawmakers hearing the views and concerns of constituents. And secondarily, it says town hall meetings should be moderated by a nonpartisan community leader who explains the guidelines of the sessions and sets the tone for a respectful discussion. And then thirdly, they were saying undertake aggressive efforts to expand the range of people who attend the town hall so that the audience is more diverse. and it includes more partisans and independents, because most Americans reside in the center of ideological spectrum now, and analysts agree that it's this group which is now significantly underrepresented at town hall meetings. And so it speaks to the diversity of trying to get the audience in, but it also speaks to the nature of trying to focus it as a learning session for the lawmakers, and something to consider. I think that may be a bit aggressive for us at this stage, since we're a new commission and no one knows us. And so it may be kind of hard to leverage any relationship we have with lawmakers. But I think somewhere down the road, it would be great if we had enough credibility and awareness such that we could actually do that, serve as kind of a liaison to lawmakers to have our tenants in the community, educate them on the issues and their feelings about them.
That's terrific, AJ. Thank you so much for doing that research. Could you potentially, I'm wondering how we could take a look at that document. I guess,
I just emailed it.
Oh, great.
So it should show up to you just like 1 minute ago.
Wonderful.
Okay.
AJ, I think that sounds great. I think framing it as a listening and learning session for the Renters Commission to be the listeners and learners, I think is great. I think the community would respond really well to that. And I think it will help with that kind of like relationship building that you're talking about too. So.
All right. Hopefully it would.
Is that all right if I share my screen to show the document to everybody?
Sure.
We look at it together just for a second.
Sure.
Cool. Okay. So this is the Paul Simon Public
Simon.
Policy Institute. I've never heard of them.
Paul Simon was a very popular, I'm from Chicago.
Oh,
a
yeah.
very popular politician and state congressman in Illinois. Well respected. Family comes from a long family of lawmakers.
I see. Huh. Okay, so yeah, I think we should all, oh, so here are the recommendations. Okay. Exchange views, they should not serve as substitutes for. Yeah, I definitely agree that we should not just, make it like an anger fest. It's easy to do that considering where a lot of people are right now, a lot of renters are. I mean, I think that if they're going to be showing up to a town hall, they've probably had a pretty bad experience with their landlord.
Complain and they want to be
Yeah. And so I would love to see, rather than everyone getting super frustrated and angry, like let's take those ideas and maybe translate them into solutions, hopefully, like ideas of solutions that we can start working on. I think that, yeah, this is wonderful. This is wonderful.
Some ideas for thought anyway.
Yeah. Okay, I'll stop sharing then.
I think somewhere in there, they also made reference to the fact that, or it may have been in some other area, that it was kind of important at the onset of these meetings to kind of tap into trusted, well-respected speakers, to kind of kick it off and use them perhaps as an opportunity to draw attendance and media coverage. And I was thinking maybe if it's possible, again, since we're a new commission, he might be willing to do it. It would be great if maybe we could get 5 minutes of the mayor's time to kick it off and say, hey, here's a new commission I've put into place, and here's what some of their objectives are. And then, essentially he just kicks it off, and then we move on to obviously the focus of the remainder of our objectives. But just something, I think it would certainly increase attendance from a renter's perspective, but it would also get the media focused if that's an objective of ours as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think yeah, I think that, he's well known enough. If he has the time and if he's willing to do it, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, time,
Good idea.
the calendar is obviously key there.
Right. Oh, excuse me. I'll be right back. I just need to take a quick break for like 2 minutes or so. You two can continue discussing.
Okay, sure.
I can check in with the mayor's office and see if there is interest or availability in doing that in the next couple of months. I know that he does have a very busy calendar, but
Right.
maybe we can see if that's something, looking at my calendar now, if that's something that would work, and then we can look at planning the meeting around those dates. Do we have any other people who we think would be a good option for maybe a second meeting, or if the mayor is unavailable?
I couldn't be of much help there, being somewhat new to the community. I've been here about 2.5 years, but not as aware of who the community leaders and more visible politicians or local politicians are.
Maybe Councilmember Radina or Nelson would be interested, or they might know someone. Would be a good or have an idea.
Sure.
It seems like a good opportunity to invite all council members just to attend and be present, because Travis and Elizabeth do attend our meetings regularly and are very dedicated, but this is one opportunity for everyone from different wards to also just listen to tenants if the objective is to bring people from tenants from around the city to show up. It might be nice if they know that their representatives might join and just listen in. I thought Kristen had frozen.
Rika, you've been very involved in this area. Are there any community leaders that are particularly outspoken that will or well respected in this whole era of rental issues in Ann Arbor? Maybe community leaders or organizational heads, or I'm not obviously familiar with anybody, but you may have some that are more widely recognized or somewhat widely recognized.
There are members of the Housing Commission and other coalitions like the Washtenaw Housing Alliance that have participated in research and discussions over the years who might be great to have. But again, let's be nice to discuss more, because even I don't have that much of a perspective on like who's an expert. There's a difference between an expert and a community leader. So
right, yeah, exactly.
Zach, we were just talking about so the mayor is one option, like other community leaders who, if are invited, would be.
Yeah. Well, I can think of a few actually, now that that just sparked something in my head. I'm wondering, there's also religious leaders. I know, of several faiths that might be interested in doing this. I'm not, that's not necessarily the thing we should start off with. Or there's also like a couple organizations that, isn't there like an Interfaith Council for Peace or something? I'm not super familiar with them. Peace and Justice. I don't remember, but that's another avenue to tap into other different kinds of communities.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking even perhaps among residents with disabilities, there are probably various committees or meetings or leaders or someone that may be, thinking again from an attendance, from an audience, and from a publicity standpoint. Those would be very good people to tap into for this.
That's a very good idea. Yeah. The main resource that comes to mind is unfortunately just one for students, which is the student is SSD, I think. SSD. But they have it's services for students with disabilities. Now that's just for students, and I do want to make sure we include students, of course, but there are so many other residents who aren't students that have disabilities. So I think that's a good thing to start exploring and thinking about.
Sure, yes.
One of our
Very good
incoming council members has experience here. I think Aisha works with Detroit Disability Power, for example, and might know of other organizations in Ann Arbor. So we could check with her as well.
Yeah, definitely.
We can check in with the Commission on Disability Issues and see. Okay.
That'd be wonderful. Yeah, thank you, Kristen.
All right.
Now, I think it would be a good idea. I mean, it sounds like we want to have a dual role for the town halls, listening and then also educating to an extent.
Sure.
Right. I saw the other day that the Housing Commission had a nice sheet, like a PDF that they posted that it's kind of like know your rights for tenants. And they had a few really good suggestions on there, from anything, there's suggestions from acquiring renters insurance to I can't remember some of the others. I can find the PDF. It's not super comprehensive. It doesn't cover obviously close to anything, to everything rather.
Right.
It's not as comprehensive as like the tenant handbook, but it does have some very good suggestions. I'm thinking if we could look around for resources like that and maybe see what there is out there for Ann Arbor and Michigan. And based on that, we can decide if we need to make new resources or additional resources to hand out to people or have available for people.
Okay.
Oh yeah, okay, I found can share my screen again. This is the Ann Arbor Housing Commission document they said they shared. So they talk about renters insurance. They talk about when and how to put your rent into escrow. I believe that's used. Are you two familiar with that process a little bit?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so it's there's like a third party that can hold your rent if you believe your landlord is committing a violation of the law and
Okay.
or of your contract. You can continue to pay rent, but to a third party, and you notify your landlord like you need to fix these problems, and then you'll get your money. I'm still paying it.
Right.
And
right.
so that's why you would have an escrow. So tenants typically consider withholding rent in the case of an absentee landlord or one that fails to properly maintain the property. It is the landlord's responsibility to maintain the properties in a livable condition. So, that was something I hadn't really considered. I had heard about it once before this, but reading this document, I thought that was, brought that to my attention.
Sure.
And then things about, what to do before you move in. I think that'd be cool if we had a sort of pamphlet. Now, and also we do have that. We have the tenant's handbook, but it's outdated, unfortunately. Yeah.
I think having a takeaway item like that is great for people to get that info, and then also other information about the Renters Commission. We can include info about the webpage or how to attend other meetings and contact info.
Right.
We could also supply the handbooks. Also, the clerk's office, I think, would be able to provide those at the meeting.
Great.
It would be really cool if we could get them updated before then, but I don't know. That probably takes a while.
I'm learning. I've been trying to learn about what that process is. I think it's going to be more complicated than we anticipated. I think that the real thing to edit is the city charter, which is more which is much more challenging than the ordinance. But if the Renters Commission does decide to undertake it, it would make a big difference moving forward. The timeline would just be long, probably over the next couple of years. But we could save that for another day.
So the process of changing the handbook is defined in the charter?
So I need to clarify.
Okay.
But my understanding is that to update the rights and duties booklet, the rules for updating that I believe are, I don't want to be quoted incorrectly, but I know
Okay,
that it is,
that's okay.
I know it's more, so like the ordinance amendment right now with right to renew, it's much more than that process, my understanding.
Sure.
And I think that the city and the clerk's office would be supportive of that initiative because it would be beneficial to renters in the city. So I can check in with my office to get that exact info
Sure.
this week.
Thank you. Oh yeah, it does look like, I think it is defined in the charter.
Which I think was intended when it was created to provide some protection for, like it couldn't be changed quickly, like without the best interest of tenants in mind.
Right.
So I think it's fine. We just will have to work through it after we identify in the work plan, see where it's ranked, and then see where we can move forward with it. What was the other thing I was going to say? Oh, we talked about the farmers market as a potential venue, and then other outdoor locations that ICPOC has used would be fine, like Liberty Plaza was talked about at the last meeting. The center of the city site. The city's green roof also is a potential location, or the city hall's green roof. That's nice because it's so close to City Hall if we wanted to see about getting supplies like tables or chairs or electricity or anything like that. So,
Kristen, a question for you. I was curious. I was talking to a friend of mine, actually. She's in Chicago, and she happened to mention that she's on the planning committee for the city of Chicago. And I start to ask, well, what do you do? And basically theirs is a group about the same size as ours. They assist other commissions who are planning events. Well, obviously Chicago's big and they've got big budgets. But I was just curious, is there such a thing as a planning committee for Ann Arbor in our structure anywhere?
so that is super interesting. There are a lot of boards and commissions for the city, but I'm not aware of one for that purpose. The city's planning commission that has a similar name is more to do with private development in the city. So, and sometimes in public sometimes, sort of. So no, but the communications department at the city is super supportive. So
Or are they? Okay.
if we needed some guidance with social media or help creating materials or just some expert advice with stuff like that, there are resources here.
Good to know.
I had a question. I'm not sure where it fits. I think it's maybe forward looking, but also helps us make decisions after these town halls. Because it's the first one, would it be helpful to present our work plan and get a quick poll or some kind of reaction from attendees on what they agree are top priorities? Like we have identified a longer list, and I'm sure like we could pick some and keep working on them. But if there's a way to also very quickly share what we compiled and get some reactions, like what are your top 3 priorities, and like gather some qualitative information from there.
Yeah, I think there's been some talk about that at some past meetings about seeing from the public what they want the Renters Commission to be working on. So
Yeah.
I think that is a good idea to have some like interactive data collection from people at the meeting.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I really like that idea as well. I think it's important to kind of discuss what the current work plan is and, throw it out there. Do you guys think that, have a feedback form or something of that nature? It could be quite open-ended. Just should we be focusing on something else, or do you disagree with something on here?
Yeah.
We'll just read through them.
I think that would also be very helpful if we're trying to get them to establish some granularity about what it is that we really are all about anyway. What are we attempting to do, and what more specific actions should they expect from us?
We kind of talked about this. Zachariah had asked initially about partnering with organizations, and we've also talked about community leaders, but from an outreach standpoint, if we think of, like, would it be a longer list of organizations that we would come up with? Like, for example, we know that Avalon Housing has done some work, like a lot of important work here. That's just one example. I'm sure there are many more, but if such organizations can amplify this message that we're gathering, like hosting an event, it would be really nice. I don't know how that would be, if they have a newsletter that they circulate, or some kind of like pamphlet that they could distribute, or a flyer. That might be, I don't know if it could cost something to make that happen, but it might be good to make sure their tenants and people they serve also find out.
Yeah, I think that to the extent that we could, and to the extent that it's appropriate, if we could, for some of these other organizations anyway, if we could tap into some of their outreach efforts, that would increase, publicity tremendously. Because they obviously have a lot more established efforts than our newer commission is going to have at this point.
What would the capacity be if this were to be, say, on the city hall garden roof? How many people?
That's a great question. I can find out. I'll also find out what resources are available, like you said, with printing or anything like that. I have a meeting next week to see what we have access to. Let's see. Green roof capacity.
Kristen, are you aware of most of the other town halls that have taken place or are taking place? Are they hybrid as well, both virtual and physical, or is there a combination of the above?
That's a good question too. Some other boards and commissions in the city meet in person, but they're also available on Zoom. The Renters Commission isn't one that is permitted to do that because it isn't a decision-making body. So like the Planning Commission and Zoning Board of Appeals and Historic District Commission and City Council, they meet in person hybrid. And then ICPOC, which I want to get that acronym right, another group has been doing in person. I don't think they're hybrid. I don't think they're available electronically. I think they're only in person, but I can confirm. I think if we wanted to attempt a outdoor meeting with like a hybrid angle, the city hall roof is the best option for that. Independent Community Police Oversight Commission. I wanted to make sure I got that right. They, I believe, have been having some outdoor town hall style meetings, which is where the farmers market came into the conversation. I think they had some at that location. So I'm not sure that so to answer your question, I'm not sure that there have been hybrid for this purpose, but there have been hybrid in like a more standard boarding commission format.
Right, right.
So, which
I would think
unfortunately,
that-
oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I would think that for, again, I just keep coming back to the fact that we are a new commission, we're kind of unknown. I think for that very reason, it would clearly be to our benefit if we were thinking hybrid. It would give us a lot more opportunity for publicity and for reach. Some are going to be a little skeptical to attend physically, but they may well tap into, if we're adequately marketed, they may well tap into, you know, and into the system in order to see it online.
Yeah, I'll check in about what's possible here at City Hall. What was cited when I asked about the Renters Commission meeting in person was the COVID-19 numbers, which I don't think have decreased since we got that info. So I think it's also possible later, kind of as time goes on, if those were to decrease, we might have some more options.
Okay.
And if we're not able to do hybrid, I think it would be nice to do maybe one in person, one virtual, you know, one
Mhm.
remote. So that's kind of like an alternative to the hybrid. It's not, I don't think it's, I don't know, I guess there are pros and cons to doing it either hybrid or separated. But
Mhm.
I think it, you know, sounds like everybody agrees that we should have at least both options, if not at the same event, then they're separate events.
Sure. Yeah, I agree.
This might be a good time to mention the other community events that popped up on my radar. I know the Graduate Students Union at U of M, GEO, they're holding a tenants. It's not called a town hall. Richard, you probably know. What is it called?
Tenants Assembly.
Tenants Assembly. Is the idea supposed to be like kind of like a town hall, right?
A town hall also called to action, talking about, you know, utilizing tools like public comment time,
Okay.
other ways to reach out to council members. So I would say there will be some time for tenants to discuss their experiences, but it will be slightly different from a town hall because there are specific, like, suggested calls to action in that event.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. And then I heard just today, this is also a student related thing, but the central student government at U of M, which is, you know, represents all the students at the 50,000 plus students at U of M, the Ann Arbor campus, they just allocated a few $1,000s to do tenant town halls. I think they want to do 2 on somewhere on campus. So that would be more student facing, of course, but I contacted some of the representatives in the central student government to see if maybe we could, I don't know if we could partner officially, or at the very least, if we could just be there and, you know, maybe a partner on the organizing side and just listen. Either way, I think that'd be really great if we could get some
Sure.
of our people to attend. And then that way we could focus our efforts on the non-student populations, non-student residents.
Sure.
Which, yeah, outreach could be really difficult. I think that might be a really hard thing to do, especially since, you know, I've noticed that even in some of the suburbs where it's a majority of homeowners, every now and then you'll come across a house that's for rent, which is unexpected. So, you know, kind of picking them out of like a needles in a
Sure.
haystack, I guess. I mean, it's not quite the same because 53% of the people in the city are renters, but you know, trying to make sure we include everybody, it's probably gonna be pretty difficult.
True, true.
I think it might be worth asking the Washtenaw Area Apartment Association to let their tenants know that there is a town hall that, I mean, I've received emails from the larger property management company that I was renting from earlier. So they do send emails at a certain frequency. They have the infrastructure. So I think it's worth it's.
I understand. Yeah. Sorry to cut you. Sorry. Did you have anything else to say? I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I just meant using. They could be a way to reach tenants, not
Yeah.
the strategy, but like one of 5 things to do. I don't think it.
I understand that, but I think that tenants might want a place where we're going to predominantly have tenants there, you know, and not landlords because of the sensitive nature of what people might be saying.
Yeah, I wouldn't want
Um,
landlords to be there. I'm saying more from an outreach standpoint. Like,
Yeah.
or can you let like, this is a tenant event very clearly. But if we were to like if varsity management has like 200 units, imagine the number of tenants they could inform if they were willing to just pass on the message. That's all,
Sure.
but not actually being there.
I guess my only concern would be that if we advertise directly to landlords, they might show up in large numbers. And that's not exactly what who we're trying to hear from. I think it's a good point and it's well taken. I just think maybe we should consider a little further the pros and cons of that.
Yeah, I think it would have to be managed, because if you have the owners showing up in large numbers, it's certainly going to change the conversation and receptivity of the tenants for sure.
See, I just feel like landlords and property management companies are aware that renters commission meetings happen, and they're present, they attend these meetings. I don't think if the message is very clear that it's actually an event for tenants. Again, I don't want to harp on this point. I just feel like it's one of like 10 things to do in terms of outreach. That's all, not the main thing. I'm wondering how else. Like, there are many other channels. I feel like if our council members could also just spread the word through their social media, even if there's like a digital graphic related to the event that can be reposted, that could also reach a lot of people. I think
Sure.
that's preferred. I would also prefer something like that.
Maybe even, I'm sure there's probably an event calendar in the local newspaper. I mean, something as broadly as that, you know. I'm thinking in terms of getting numbers and message out to the masses and kind of start there.
Yeah,
Maybe,
that's great. I think the Observer has one. Ann Arbor Observer has a calendar. The city has a calendar, right?
We'll be able to put it on the city's calendar.
Right. You do flyering. Oh, sorry.
Right.
Go ahead, Kristen.
Are there any other groups that you're aware of? We don't have to name them now if you don't want to, on social media or other places like that, for renters or tenants, or I don't, if there are groups of anything like that is another option, if we're aware of any of them.
I know of the Washtenaw Housing Alliance, WHA. They're quite prominent. I think local labor unions might be interested in sharing that and boosting it. Here, I know there's
Could other commissions just pass on the message in their various meetings? I know that there is attendance at other meetings that might do work that's somewhat related or that's relevant for tenants as well. Like, even though it's not exactly about like rental services, I think that'd be helpful. Some commissions, like those meetings are also attended by others. So plug would be really great.
You could check in with some other groups that have some overlapping work, and see if they'd be either willing to kind of announce and maybe provide a link or anything like that, or if there'd be an opportunity for someone from the Renters Commission to attend and give like a short, that has definitely been done by other groups for events like this or other initiatives. So I'll see,
yeah,
I'll see who's
there's Housing Commission and HHSAB, the Housing and Human Services Advisory Board. So two things or bodies we should reach out to.
That was Housing Human Services Advisory Board.
Yeah,
Okay.
Housing and Human Services Advisory Board, HHSAB.
Okay.
I wonder if we could see the areas where we have the densest, like the highest density of renters. I think we should be able to see that through, I guess, technically like the e-tracking information. I don't know how to access that very easily, but if we were able to see that like on a map, that would be really cool. And then we could see, okay, there's a lot of renters in this area. We should really put flyers up in that spot, make sure that they're aware of it.
Sure.
Yeah.
I can definitely look into that with GIS at the city to see if we're able to map those certificates of compliance, I think.
Right. And see how many like units there are. I know that's probably a difficult thing to do if it's not already an option, but it's just it would be really cool. Helpful.
I think they'll be able to if that data, if it exists in a way that would make that work. That would give us some ideas of some larger, if there's any larger complexes or anything like that we wanted to do some outreach to also.
Yeah, that would be great. And then maybe we could work with that communications committee to see how we could target them in terms of some type of flyer distribution.
Mm-hmm. I know that postcards can be expensive, so I'd like to think about how to reach people. Posting flyers I think is great. I think we can look at mailing, but it's sometimes mail also is really slow sometimes. So I think that that's an option, and that's all also data that the city has, mailing addresses. But I don't know if it will be most effective. So.
Okay. Good ideas for outreach there, I think.
Mhm. Zach, you had started by talking about a specific objective. Do you have enough specificity there to work with for this meeting? Or I know we kind of moved on from there with some of the executional ideas, but
right. Well, I think there are still a few things we should try to think about a little bit further. Like, I guess knowing when we would want to hold these events would be very helpful, because I think right to renew is probably going to come up to a vote in sometime in October, most likely. That could change, but oh, excuse me, someone shouting in the background. But if it does pass, assuming that that might be something that we would really want to inform people about. At the very least, informing people about the early leasing ordinance amendment that happened last year. It's kind of confusing, and people read it and they think it does one thing, but it turns out because of some of the loopholes, it doesn't do that thing. And that was confusing to me anyway. So that might be helpful to inform people about specific pieces of legislation, like specific ordinances.
mhm.
I think that's helpful for timeline to think about kind of post right to renew so that you have that to talk about. Because you all talked a little bit earlier about having kind of a educational piece. I think that if it was like if the ordinance was in effect, it would be more meaningful than explaining that it's still in the works. So
True.
cool.
There's always the question of whether or not it's going to be challenged in the courts, and then I don't think it's enforceable during that period of time, and then we don't know if it's going to be struck down or if it's going to be upheld, and then
Yeah,
so they could really complicate things, and we can't really inform people about something that we're not sure is going to be enforceable.
that's true.
Yeah.
So maybe we could cross that bridge when we get
Right. Yeah.
Um,
But it still gives us something meatier to talk about, even if it's passed and it's likely to be challenged. We can speak about the importance of the issues
sure.
to us and point to that as an indication of the need for commissions like ours to make sure that tenants' rights are being advanced at the appropriate meetings and at the appropriate levels.
It makes sense to have that at like the second or third meeting, but the first one, I think AJ had mentioned at the beginning around like listening. If it's the very first official public gathering done by the Renters Commission, maybe like, let's hear what has generally been a priority. But also I feel like in Ann Arbor, and I think in any city, it's kind of seasonal also, like between like in the fall, or like when people are signing leases and just starting out with in their new apartments, the challenges and questions vary. And then when you get into like winter, there's like a whole other set of concerns around like quality of housing, especially with heating and things like that. So I think like every 3 months, if there's a town hall, we would get like a variety of issues that come up based on where you are in the leasing cycle, but also the weather, because it's so much variation in Ann Arbor. So something like a right to renew type ordinance, I think I agree with what was said around, when it gets passed is when we'll also have more clarity. There is a few things that are yet to be confirmed right now, though there's a lot of progress. So meeting 2 or 3 seems like
I think a quarterly town hall meeting would be really manageable for this group and for staff. So I think that's a great idea. And that would allow a lot of time between to plan and to kind of change, what worked and what didn't at the last meeting. So I think that's great.
Can I add one more thing? I feel like we know, I think through some of our recent Renters Commission conversations, that there is like rental housing services, for example, has a process in place. So where the process is tried and tested, is it worth getting feedback? Like, whereas with like ELO and right to renew, we are talking about enforcement right now. And like 3 months from now, that might be another thing to check in about. So at the first town hall, just a thought around like complaints with maintenance and repairs. Like, the city has a process. We've heard mixed things. So that could be a way to educate, but also get feedback on a tenant like problem solving process that's in place. But again, I don't want to assume too much about like what matters to the tenants in the first meeting.
Sounds like, so I like the idea of the seasonal meeting, or town hall rather. That seems really manageable. Like Kristen said, we already have 3 tenants related events probably coming up that other people are planning. Two focused on, I guess all 3 are focused probably on students. Yeah. But that's something that we can all attend and perhaps play a role in maybe giving like advice or counsel to them as they plan it, if they're interested in that.
Sure.
Just getting kind of our feedback. I like the idea of having our first one just kind of mostly listening rather than super focus, I guess less focus on the education. Maybe we can get some resources out to them. Maybe,
Sure.
we'll have the handbooks, have some of those things from the Housing Commission and maybe some other things we can come up with. And just listen, because by our first meeting, it's likely going to be unclear if right to renew is enforceable. We don't even know if it's going to be passed by then. So I guess that leaves the question, when do we want to have our first meeting? And importantly, if it's going to be in the winter or in the fall, we can't really do that outside. In the fall, perhaps, but we have to consider that it's going to be a bit risky with the weather. So what do you two think? Or what do you all think, all three of you?
As a group, we'll be thinking October at some point, or is that?
That was thrown out there, yeah.
Was, I think at best, or the earliest would probably be late October, just in terms of a lot of the executional things we've discussed today coming together, particularly of a communication standpoint, flyers, things of that nature. It takes a while to coordinate it and to make it specific enough to the targets that we want to reach.
Yeah, and we rushed a bit, and because of the right to renew, and I don't want to put more pressure on the commissioners. So I don't want the workload to be too high. So if we do it earlier, we're going to have to be scrambling a bit.
Right.
But if we do it in November or December, we're going to have to do it inside or just online.
That's true. That's true.
I think October is manageable. Staff wise, I can check in with the mayor's office and see if the mayor is interested or even available. I know he has a really busy schedule. And then we can kind of go from there if that's an option. I can also find out if there are any accommodations that would be available to us. I'm thinking about how some outdoor dining style accommodations, like heat, if there are heat lamps that would be available or anything like that. If the Renters Commission wanted to do an outdoor kind of cold weather meeting. So I can find out if there's anything available to us for that.
A random thought. I've been to an event with OSI, the sustainability Office of Sustainability Innovations at in the Ann Arbor City government, and they had an event with it was about educating people about heat pumps, and they had like a big tent. It was outside. It was at the Ann Arbor Distillery, I think that's correct. And they had a tent, and it was very, it was a bit chilly, but it was okay. The tent helped, and I think it was drizzling outside, which it kept us warm. And they had presentations and that sort of thing there inside the tent, and I thought that was really nice. It was well done. So if you maybe, Kristen, if you could find any information about who planned that event, that would be really interesting to see if they have any notes from that.
Sounds great.
Do you think it might be possible to invite city staff from different departments who have experience just to be there and potentially answer some questions immediately, not offer commitments because those are always complicated, but say someone from rental housing services, the inspection team is present, and someone has a small, this is not, housing like rental clinic session, but if there are quick questions that common things that come up and someone could speak to those right there, it might be effective.
Yeah, we can definitely invite someone. When you were saying that, it made me think about maybe they'd be willing to meet with this group beforehand to see if there are any frequently asked things that they could share with this group. If they're unable to attend, maybe they can pass some info along, or maybe it would just work better for rental housing to I don't, we can see what their availability is, but I think that touching base with them before the meeting is a good idea. Before or during.
Yeah, I think that would be very helpful going forward. In any case, getting to know them better and getting to find out a little bit more about the services that they provide.
Yeah, and they may have some resources if we're wanting to provide that, like
Hopefully, that
like
would be
paper
great.
resources to people in real time instead of since we're in person. So
And I wonder if we could consult before this with someone related to kind of like a housing clinic sort of, institution. I know of a Detroit-based one called UCHC, United Community Housing Coalition. They don't just do tenant stuff. They also do, like mortgage, people who own their own homes, but they do tenant stuff. And I know that a lot of the rules that regulate tenancies are on the state level, and perhaps they could, maybe they have some resources regarding state law that we could either distribute or just have handy in order to answer some of the questions. Again, they are Detroit based, so that's, wouldn't hurt to reach out. I know they're very busy, but perhaps that would be a good idea. And then also another potential person that, we could invite is someone from the U of M Law School. If there are any people who are who work, any professors that focus on tenant landlord law, perhaps they could come or provide us with resources. It would be really cool, even if one of them maybe has a presentation that they would want to give to tenants. That would be really awesome. I don't have those connections yet, but I think it would be good to just kind of take some shots in the dark and see what happens.
do you want to talk a little bit about we've talked about the format of the meeting a little bit, but do we want to talk about it a little bit more specifically so that we can plan it more specifically, I guess? Do you want to start with like a renters commission introduction and some information, or how do you picture kind of the agenda of the meeting going? I think if the mayor was able to attend, I think that would be we talked about that being kind of at the beginning.
The opening, yeah, I think that would be great. Just in terms of, being a little selfish, using it to draw the attendance, but also the media coverage, would follow at that level as well, which certainly wouldn't hurt us from an attendance standpoint.
And even a city council member or two, if they're interested, I know we can't have the whole council there, nor that's something that we need to have or, should strive for. But I think even if we had a city council member, maybe if Travis is willing to do it, and Councilmember Rodino, who put forth the resolution to create this commission, that would make a lot of sense in my mind.
Sure.
Yeah. So I guess we would introduce ourselves, introduce what the Renters Commission is, maybe read some of the stuff from the bylaws, like that explains why we were created. That's also in the resolution.
And perhaps after that, kind of get quickly into what we had talked about was kind of the key part of the objective, which is kind of the listening and learning. Maybe we structure some types of interactive exercises to make sure that we're doing just that. We're listening and learning.
Yeah. I think asking tenants to talk with each other as well would be really helpful. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Kristen. I saw you were about to talk.
Oh, no, that's fine. I don't remember what I was going to say. I'll come back to it. It's fine.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go.
If you have categories that you're interested in, I was wondering if you like if categories like landlord issue as an umbrella category, or rent as an umbrella category, or availability of units as a if you wanted to sort of do these categories and have that be a way to break attendees into groups, or it would help people kind of get ready to talk to you. If we were doing it town hall style, it would help people kind of know when they were going to go speak in front of people and prepare what they were going to say. And it also would allow people to, if we were to publish that, it would allow people to prepare ahead of time what they
Good
wanted
idea.
to communicate to the Renters Commission.
Yeah.
And then with that, I wanted to see if you have any ideas for a way for people to share an idea with you that isn't getting up in front of people and talking about it.
Yeah.
Because that is hard to do. It's
Yeah.
especially hard to do about topics like this, about housing. So I think we could definitely have like an in-person paper option. I think we could do a link to a Google form or SurveyMonkey, something like that. So whatever you guys think would be, or if you've done something in the past that worked really well, if you've attended an event, I'll ask around here too, see if there's anything that has worked particularly well, especially with a topic like this. So
Previous lives in corporate town halls, something that worked effectively in terms of both managing the town hall in terms of trying to get a feel for how well it was going to be attended, but also in terms of trying to get some advanced feedback on who was going to be attending was for the electronic portion of it. They required RSVPs and that, or they suggested RSVPs, and that kind of allowed them to get a feel for the size of the event, which you certainly want to know, but it also gives you some information in terms of just general classifications, tenant, for how long, where in the city, that type of information. And I think not only the beginning part of it, but it'd be very helpful for us after the fact if we want to start to develop some databases, some mailing lists or things of that nature for tenants out there. It would be a good start toward trying to build those databases.
a great idea.
Really good points, AJ. Thanks.
We could do an in-person sign up and a online. We could put something on the Renters Commission webpage, and then also just have kind of a clipboard and pen at the meeting too.
Exactly. Mhm.
Cool.
It's so helpful to know how many people are coming. So that's such a good, just from prior experience, that's a really good suggestion.
Yeah.
So I definitely think suggested RSVP or RSVP highly encouraged,
Right.
that would be very helpful.
Yeah. To the extent that we can kind of aggressively suggest it without dictating it, it'd be very helpful for us going forward.
I don't want to bar people from coming if they didn't RSVP, but we should make that clear that anybody can come.
Sure.
That's great. We talked a little bit about kind of the beginning of how the meeting will go, and then we just talked about kind of an end, like a, I don't want to say exit survey, but just like a it makes me think of the end of the meeting to have this info about people who came. So how do you want kind of the middle of the meeting to go? Do you want that to be the Renters Commission listening part? So I'm thinking.
Well, I have an idea. I really like the idea of making it interactive. I like the idea of forming some kind of groups of the participants. I don't know how, what the groups would be formed around, if there was an idea a number of participants per group, you know. But I think that perhaps while that's happening, we can have our commissioners go and attend those groups and, you know, not add anything, but just listen. So we listen there, then we go to have like a speak out, you know, traditional town hall thing where people get in line and maybe share comments if they'd like to. And then we'll all be, you know, listening to that. Perhaps it's even a good idea to not even have because, you know, I guess what I imagined was a table up front with all the commissioners and then everybody else in the audience. But maybe we should disperse the commissioners, just have a name tag on, disperse them throughout the crowd and make it more like a circular kind of inward conversation. Because maybe that'll help people with nerves, because I really do empathize with what you said, Kristen, about how that's really difficult to do. To, you know, public speaking alone in any context is really hard, but especially on these issues.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, so just to recap, you know, maybe splitting up, having some kind of group discussions, and then a share out afterward.
Do you want the group discussions to be like, do we want to tell people like this far corner, if you want to talk about this, and go, maybe it's split up into quadrants. So like quadrant 1, if you wanted to talk about affordability, quadrant 2, or do you want it to be just kind of more like organic and how they're grouped, I guess, and talking about topics? I think lots of people will have the same several concerns, just kind of how it's ranked for them individually. So I don't know how you want to organize that.
Yeah.
This is something I just want to say. I don't know if it's the most effective, but if it's in person, if it's by either like completely random or by ward or something, sometimes if it's about people nominating themselves to talk about issues, oftentimes it's like the loudest voices that might just like grab some things first. And so if it can be to some extent randomized, but also like even within each group, I feel like if it's at a ward level, there could be some neighborhood. Firstly, there's a way to report back to council members that, you know, this is not just a Ward 1 issue, actually even people in your ward are, it's maybe like one way to summarize information. But that's just one thing. Sometimes you'll be like, yes, we talked about rent, but like who were these people exactly? Like just a way, it might be more convenient than perfect, but that's just one thought.
I think grouping people geographically is a great idea. I don't know if people will know what ward they're in, especially if they're new to the city. But you could do just like the city in kind of 4. You can kind of see on this map how it's kind of just, or I'm pointing at my screen, how it's just kind of 4. So we can maybe just do quadrants of the city. I think that's a good idea. And then also just do like an outside of the city group or something like that.
It could potentially be a way, again, if it's in person, for people to get to know others in their neighborhoods or people nearby. Just a sense of
That's true.
At the same time, we need to make sure that that doesn't potentially diffuse some of the other concerns or issues that some of the tenants may come in with. For instance, if I'm coming in because I'm really concerned about the availability of suitable housing for disabled tenants, and kind of you put me into a group that's focused on, you know, geographic kind of concerns, it may kind of diminish that a bit. It doesn't have to, but we just need to think about how we do it so that we don't do that unnecessarily.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think one concern with some of the ideas we've talked about here about how to split people up is some of them would likely have lopsided groups where you have a lot more in one group and not as many as in another group.
Mhm.
I don't think that I doubt that renters are dispersed evenly, across the whole city. I think they're
Certainly
more,
not. Yeah.
no, there's a higher percent in certain wards. And on certain issues, there's a lot of people who are going to come and talk about affordability, right?
Right.
And that makes sense. I'm not sure. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but if we want to create kind of like more equal groups of similar size, we may want to consider how to deal with that. If 60% of people would go to the affordability discussion, because I know I probably would. Yeah.
And it's hard to choose what you're most interested in. So yeah.
The alternative would be, I think Kristen may have referenced that in a comment earlier, is if we and just set aside a certain amount of time to discuss various topics and have it topic focused as opposed to separation of the individuals. That may be one way to make sure that there's adequate time given to a larger number of activities, and we don't necessarily skew it on the basis of the size of the audience.
We could also plan the activities a little in greater detail as we get RSVPs. If we have one of the RSVP questions like, oh, which of these categories would you like to
Biggest
most concerning
concerns.
to you? Yeah.
Yes.
Would you speak about if you were to speak? That could potentially guide us.
Sure.
I think knowing that you want to do a kind of group activity is enough now for the agenda. And then maybe in a month or so we can revisit and see
How we do it. Yeah. Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
And I have one thing at the end of this. I think that we should write a report to share with the commission, to share with other commissions, and to share with council members about just kind of maybe if there will be a recording, I think, and if we could even do some basic quantification of, okay, this percent of people who spoke about this issue, this percent had issues with with this law or whatever, and then that could maybe give some data. It would be probably pretty rudimentary, but it could be helpful, and maybe have some like anecdotes, say like, okay, this looks like a really important issue that one person or three people happened to bring up. Yeah, I don't, Kristen, have other commissions done reports like that on event or like on? I don't know.
I think it's likely that especially, so I'm the group that comes to mind is sustainability, because they've done so much engagement and outreach. So I can see what they have in the past. I've seen informal, a little bit more informal reports with some other groups I've worked with, but I'll see what sustainability has to see if maybe if there's something we can work from.
That'd be helpful.
Zach, you mentioned the report. I was wondering, is it possible, and maybe other commissions are doing this currently, but is it possible to have maybe a video recording of the meeting kind of attached to our website after it's over, so that constituents who weren't able to attend can view the entire event? Is that too much? It's probably very involved. It sounds simple to say, but is it something that we could look into?
I think if it's possible to have the meeting be hybrid, I think it would be possible to have it recorded. If we're not able to record the meeting, we can definitely provide the information on the webpage. We can do a whole section about this engagement series and the results from it.
And then there's also the question of, do we want it to be recorded, and do we want that recording to be available to people if people might be sharing some personal stories? You know,
Yeah.
that's a
good
difficult
point.
question. I know it's come up a few times.
Yeah. Privacy issues, it could be.
I mean, it is a public event, and I think that a good kind of middle ground here is, maybe if it's possible to record it, let's do it, but let's make it clear, obviously very clear that it's being recorded, and make it clear if you don't want your story to be shared, you can do it through the digital form that we have, and just mark, you want it to remain anonymous. We should have that as an option for, like, a digital comment, and then that way people who might be sharing something that might be really sensitive, and they, maybe they're afraid of retaliation, for example, they'd be able to do that. Yeah.
Cool. So I have in my notes kind of this opening from mayor or council person, and then kind of a blurb from the Renters Commission. This is who we are. This is what we've been doing. We're really interested in hearing from you. Small group split up, and then public, and then kind of the town hall, or were you thinking to do the town hall comments before?
The town hall comments after the group event, I think, but that's up to the, if AJ or Richa, if you have ideas about that, it's up to you too.
What's a good place to add the work plan overview?
Oh yeah, probably at the beginning, in my opinion, when we introduce ourselves, introduce what we're working on, go over to do an overview of the event.
Yeah, kind of use that as our purpose for being here.
Yeah,
As
and make it,
yeah.
and then make it clear that based on this event and other town halls, this work plan is flexible, and we want to make sure it meets the needs of all of you. So
Sure.
I think that could flow quite nicely. And then at the end, maybe talk about the resources that we have to give out to people if we have those, takeaway things. Yeah.
Right now you have the work plan split into those groups like legislation, education. I'm wondering if it would be effective to have the work plan ranking be kind of a physical activity where you can people can stick something on the topic they're most interested in, or write something if it's on a big poster board on an easel or something like that. Kind of as something people can do when they are arriving, or maybe when one small group is finished, but we're still waiting on the other ones. And that way we'd have a physical, or we could pull from that, there were 50 sticky notes under affordability kind of situation. I'll think more about that. Or we could even just do show of hands with the group.
I thought if people, whether in person or digital, as people are coming in, could it be a way to just circle or tick some things? I don't know how quick or involved that is. But I guess a show of hands just is one way to get a response quickly.
And you don't need any supplies for show of hands. If we were going to have people, we'd need to have and it wouldn't be an issue to get tables and pencils and things like that, but it just is to move people through the flow of the meeting. I wonder if it would really back up at a survey station.
Sure.
But if it was a guided activity as part of the small group exercise, maybe that could work.
I wanted to add a very quick thought before I forget. I think this is something Zachariah had mentioned, where if commissioners were to be a part of various smaller groups. They just spread out and listen. That might also help us gather information quickly. Oftentimes, writing a report, synthesizing all of that takes time. But if everyone's just in various groups, if we had a report back or like we regrouped at a future Renters Commission meeting, we would already have some points to work with. But I don't think it answers anyone's like last question. I just wanted to say that I agreed with that point. And it's a good way to, respond and react quickly.
I kind of feel this is a tangent, but I kind of feel that in terms of the date, we might want to shoot for later than October. I don't want to rush anybody. I don't want to put undue stress on people. And I know that, it's just the beginning of September, but things happen quickly. And since some other commissioners and I are involved in the right to renew, that's one thing that we're juggling. And I think that we wouldn't want to, I want to do it right, I guess. So maybe if we shoot for like, I guess perhaps late October, but like mostly probably November. I don't know. What do you think, Kristen?
I think late October is really feasible from clerk's office staff perspective. With the election on November 8th, where resources are just a little bit, will be a little bit thin here.
Sure.
And then with post-election, there still is so much wrap up. So, and then after that, we're kind of getting into the holidays, which is hard for people are out of town. So I know that October is tight, but since it's, maybe we can, looking at the calendar.
I know how I could have done that, but I totally forgotten about the timing of the election.
Just want
I did
to
too.
think about just availability, especially like with people too. And also we should look at, I know there is is it a long weekend or something in the fall for students at U of M where there's like a fall
study break.
Yeah, we will want to look at the U of M calendar to make sure we're not holding this when lots of students are out of town.
Yeah, and also coordinate with the student government to make sure we're not double, booking or in very close proximity, because that probably would not be good for turnout.
Sure.
Well, I guess that can be an action item on my part. I'll talk to the student government people and see when they're looking to hold it. I'll see if they're interested in collaborating a little bit. Maybe because if we can, if they're even interested in kind of coming up with like a standardized way to do these, that could help in our kind of information gathering. And then I can report back at the next committee meeting.
Okay.
That would be great. And like I said, I'll check in with the mayor and see if there's any interest or availability in October, and then maybe we can try to act on that, because it's might be hard to coordinate. So, okay. Is there anything else we should consider? I feel it seems like kind of the least turnover was in the past couple of weeks. Anything else that is like in this like sphere?
Well, I know that I keep on hearing about the waitlist deposits. I know that's, I don't know if that'll be a factor in the town hall, but I suspect, I'm hoping that we're going to hear about that the next Renters Commission meeting, like the full commission meeting. And it was also mentioned at the city council meeting last night. I think Councilmember Briggs indicated that we really should look into seeing if we can get rid of them altogether. I think she pointed out that we've heard from tenants and some landlords who just don't, think that the practice is exploitative. But we'll talk about that at the Renters Commission meeting.
Zach, did you also say security deposit, or did you just say waitlist deposit only?
I just said waitlist deposit. Security deposit has another issue.
It might come up at this time of the year if people have exited one lease and gotten into another typically. And I know that Geo had
Yeah.
done a very useful thread. It was very informative about how you can get your deposit back. So that might come up if you're doing it like on a seasonal basis, and we ask people to recall in the last 2 months what are some challenges that you may have faced. Like if there are prompts like that, it might come up. But again, I think when we do small group sharing, maybe a few, like 2 or 3 prompts, like really broad, might help guide it a little bit or structure it a little so we can all reflect later and have some common questions to have answers to.
I think you have a really good start for planning this meeting. We have kind of a general agenda for the meeting, and there's some you've outlined some specific goals. I will look into all of that stuff, like mayor scheduling and staff resources and green roof capacity and rental unit mapping. Let me know also if there's anything in the meantime, kind of after this meeting, please feel free to email and ask if there's anything else you'd like me to look into.
There's one thing, actually, I'm sorry to add another
That's
to
fine.
do on your to-do list. But refreshments, either,
Oh.
even if it's just water, I'd like to maybe see the policies on that. If it happens to be at City Hall, that would be good to know if we're allowed to have food, allowed to have water, and what the what the protocol is on that.
I think that's great, especially if people are going to be there for a long time. If it's over an hour or more. Cool. I've been taking notes. I'll type up some more organized notes and send them to you guys or to you all, hopefully by early next week.
Okay, great.
And then we can kind of check in about how things are going. What do you anticipate your timeline for having these committee meetings?
Well, if we're gearing the event toward late October, we need to be doing them fairly frequently.
Yeah.
Just thinking of all the things we discussed in this meeting.
I know. There is a lot of flexibility with scheduling because they're not televised. So I have really open availability during the workday and also in the evening to meet. If it's better for you all to meet during the day, that's fine too. There is public comment at these meetings. So if we want to keep in mind when people are available to comment, or if we want to kind of emphasize that comment can also be received by the entire commission at the regular meetings, that's fine too. So maybe I can include in my email early next week, asking about availability if you don't have anything firm you wanted to do now.
I think if we were to have a date, and that would help us like get started with things like outreach while we plan, like the finer details of the format and things like that. So there's like a couple of key details, probably having a date and venue, like a date and like virtual versus in-person kind of decision be made. And who would create those materials, by the way? Like if we were to do a flyer, usually who handles that in other commissions?
depends a little bit on, I think it varies group to group. I think the clerk's office has some resources to create that with staff and graphics. We can reach out to communications. I think if we're worried about timeline, I'd have to see what their workload is too, if they were to do something official, but I think that it would be fine for staff to work on it, or if anyone on the commission was interested, or if anyone on this committee was interested, that would be totally fine too. If we were going to publish anything kind of with a renters commission name on it, I would like for staff to see it first, just to make sure we've got, just in case anything needed to be changed.
Sure.
I don't anticipate any issues, but just for.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good, that makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Cool. So I'll see what
Okay.
staff is interested in here, unless anyone here is interested. I'm happy to do that too. Let's see.
Is that just a question in terms of procedure? Is there anything that we've discussed here or decisions that we've made here that you think is necessary to just bounce off the full commission next week in our meeting? Just to heads up, hey, what do you think? This is how we're headed. You know, even just the objective itself, you know, kind of focusing on listening and learning, you know, just so that we kind of keep them in the loop. Is that appropriate, or is that how it work, or just a question?
I think it would be great to give a short update. And then if they have any questions, we could answer them.
I can also volunteer as backup for any like graphics or something if city staff and others are busy.
If that's something you're interested in doing, or something you like to do, or that you do professionally, I think it would be totally fine and appropriate for you to take the lead on that if you wanted to. But if not, that's okay too. I can check in here and see.
Yeah, I think I'd be happy to like sketch something out and then we can.
That's awesome. Cool.
I don't do it professionally. I just feel like in the interest of time and to get the ball rolling.
Great.
Is anyone interested in providing that update to the Renters Commission next week? The full Renters Commission?
I think AJ would do great because you came in with the strong Paul Simon Foundation.
That's true.
Again, I can also volunteer. I know Zach will be facilitating, Zach and Kristen. So you're keeping that in mind.
Okay, gladly. Gladly, I will look forward to receiving the notes from Kristen with a little more details on all the things that we've discussed, and I'll pull together just a brief recap. Is that suitable with you, Zach?
Most definitely.
Okay, great.
Thank you very much, AJ. And thank you, Kristen, for taking those notes.
This meeting
And-
also, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say thank you to our one attendee. I just wanted to give a shout out there. I'm surprised that they hung in throughout the whole meeting. So Atara, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Here's to you.
All right, so we have a little bit of a plan for moving forward until we get a little bit more information, kind of from my end. And then we also have a plan for reporting back to the whole commission. Is there anything else that you'd like to cover tonight or put on our radar or anything?
Nothing else on my end.
Did we decide when we were going to meet again, the committee?
No. It kind of sounded like we wanted to feel out when the next, or when we would be able to, or when you would be able to have the town hall meeting. But I think that if you wanted to kind of do like an every other week or every third week, that also would be fine.
Okay. Let me see if we take a look at the calendar. Dun, dun, dun. I suppose we could plan to do it if, I mean, if this is all right with everybody, in 2 weeks to just meet. You know, if it turns out we don't have anything to discuss, we can just call it off and postpone it. So long as that works with all of you. And if we don't, yeah, again, if we don't have the answers about like availability, then we can just postpone it. But
Sure, yeah. I think it at least keeps the ball rolling. I
Yeah.
agree, it's a good idea.
Yeah.
I don't think we want to meet any less frequently than that.
right. And you know, we can also set a cap of like an hour on meetings if that's something people are looking to. I know this is, you know, an hour and 45 minutes we're going on, and I don't want to be disrespectful to any of you for, you know, I want to respect your time, I suppose is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, that's fine.
At the next meeting, we'll have a more firm idea of what we will talk about. So I think that will help with time too. We'll have a little bit more focused agenda. So I think that's great. I'm looking at my calendar. I think that Wednesday or Thursday that week would be fine, the 28th or the 29th. In the evening. So I'll send out I'll send an email with some time options.
Great. And then Kristen, I'm sorry, I didn't remember. I'd asked you earlier when we were chatting, just there, how many members? You said there was one or two others that were slated to be on this committee? Or?
Good question. Lucy Peterson also expressed interest, but just wasn't able to make it tonight. So they'll be included kind of on the communications in the future, and also in the calendar invite. So I'll be sure to include.
Okay.
See, I think we'd have a conflict if we were to do 6 p.m. Wednesday, because they have a union meeting, like same time. She's usually in another meeting.
6 is fine with me. I can also do any time that day to make that work for an hour out to hour to 2 hours. So you said Wednesday you have a conflict.
Wednesday, I know Lucy has would
Oh.
have a conflict.
Okay.
6 p.m. Wednesdays, they have a standing meeting, but there's all like Thursday. Yeah, but the week of 19th sounds good to me in general to follow up. So
Okay.
19th, 24th.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
That week is great.
Looks good for me too.
Okay. Right. So is there anything else?
Don't believe there is.
Get a hand raised.
Oh, yeah, Tara rose their hand.
Up to you all. I think it would be fine to allow this caller to leave a comment. Okay.
Sure.
You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi. I just had a question. If you guys would potentially consider maybe opening public comment at the end of meetings. I think some people might find that helpful, just because you guys do cover a lot in the meetings, and for participants to be able to ask questions to clarify what you guys talk about. I just wanted to put that out there and see if it was something you guys would be open to doing.
Yeah, I guess that's where we talk. But thanks for the comment. Yeah, I definitely think that's a great idea. Thank you. I think that, we discussed that for our main renters commission meetings. I think we would need to amend our bylaws. Is that right, to put that in at the end of the meeting automatically?
To make this change shorter term, I think we could either publish the agenda originally with a public comment at the end so that it was
Oh.
sort of always with the meeting's agenda. But if the Renters Commission wanted to do that long term, we would, it would be best practice to amend the bylaws. Also, at every meeting during approval of the agenda could be amended to add a public comment section at any time with a vote.
Yeah.
So there definitely is. It would be possible to do that at the next meeting if you wanted to.
Yeah, and
I'm sorry,
Kristen, so
did you
yeah,
say without a vote or with a vote? I didn't hear you, Kristen.
After the agenda is published and available to the public and the meeting has started, to add public comment at the end, it should be done with a move and a second and a vote. But before the meeting, so like at the end of this week when I'm creating the agenda before I publish it, I think that we could add it to the end so that it's there from, so the agenda wouldn't have been amended. I can double check. In either case, it's possible to add one at the end of the meeting.
and Kristen, do we have a functional email address for the whole commission?
Yes.
Okay.
Renters Commission at a2gov.org.
Renters Commission at a2
gov.org.
gov.org. Okay, so yeah, okay, it's coming up here. Yeah, so if you ever have any questions to the comment, the attendee here, and for some reason you're not able to make the public comment sessions, feel free to send an email to the email address, and we'll be sure to answer it.
Yes, that's a great way to get in contact with the whole commission, and it's a great way to provide a lot of information to the whole commission. So any comment received would be provided to the board or to the commission ahead of time, so they would have time to read it in advance of the meeting. So, if provided soon enough. So, if there are no other items you'd like to discuss, we can go ahead and adjourn the meeting. What time is it?
7:53.
7:53.
Yes.
Okay, so this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
So much, Kristen.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very grateful for your work. Okay, see you all at the next commission meeting, the full commission meeting, which is, I believe, on the 15th.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Next week.
Next week, next Thursday. Okay.
Um,
All right.
Great. Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Yep.
You too.
Take care all.